their opinions. And Phil Bennett joins us now on 365 Sports. Where do you want to start with him, Paul? You want to start with the college football playoff first?
I'm gonna ask him this. Look, I watched a team he was coaching on win a bowl game handily without any quarterbacks on it, and my team is left out of the playoff when they're going to be on their second string quarterback, and that's the reason given. Coach, how do you feel about one player being injured as the justification to keep an undefeated team out of the playoff?
The thing that bothers me about all of it, did you guys happen to hear Danny Cannell today?
No.
He made a profound statement, which is true. He said, let's call this what it is. He said, this is not a playoff. He said, this is an invitational to go to the playoff. And he says, you have to have an invitation to go to the playoff. And the rules have been changed almost weekly, when you have an injury. Now, Paul, I don't think there's any question that Florida State is not the team. And I think you would agree with this without Travis. And so if the protocol is saying at the moment, who are the best four teams, if it has to be in that realm, not conference championship, not undefeated, but in the realm of who are the best four teams, I think they got it right. Now, I'm not sure that's the way it was written. And I think that there's a lot to what you just said. It would be like us. You're right. People don't realize it, but in 15, we lost the Sugar Bowl because we didn't have a quarterback. And it was hard. It was tough. And I feel for them. And I just don't think, I don't think the people realize the other thing they talked about, and it's true. And I want your opinion on this. Do you truly think that they were going to leave Alabama out of it and the SEC would get no representation into? I mean, they can say what they want to. Conferences don't matter. That's not true. And so let's say, my question is, let's say that Travis would have stayed healthy. They would have stayed on top. Who would have got screwed? Alabama or Texas?
Well, see, then in that scenario, when taking away the excuse for Travis, right? So that one's out. So they can't really, say that because they've got, and Florida State's numbers would have backed up, with the offense and everything they had. Then they do to Texas what they did to you in 2014. Right.
And think about this. People have brought this up. And I'm not sure Cardell Jones was a third string quarterback. Some people said he was, but they ended up, playing and winning the national championship with a third string quarterback.
Yeah,
it's not fair, but as we all know, it's just there's too much room for error, and it's very unfortunate that a group of kids did an unbelievable job, had a great season, and a fan base that's rabid that just is not going to get to celebrate it.
Yeah, I think Alabama going and winning the title would be like the best bet for ESPN at this point. Be like, see, we got the right team, and that's what happened with Ohio State when they let them in there. But, Phil, from your point of view and knowing how college football set up these days, if you had your preference, the committee came to you or the powers that be and said, how would you construct the postseason? How would you construct the postseason?
If you remember, the BCS computers what was one of that deal, I would do more of a combination of that, and I would make it a point, end of the season, best teams. And obviously, Craig, you would have to go head-to-head means something. I don't care when it was. And you could go down, and I think that you're going to have the same issues with 12 as you had with 4 at some point. They're 13, 14, 15 are going to feel they got left out for some reason. I just don't. My answer has always been what 1AA does. Let's truly have a playoff. It might take a little bit longer, but if you had a playoff, it truly would determine who the national championship is. And they've been doing it for years and years, and they're good at it.
One of the things about the way that they do that is that, yes, conference champions get in. There are some at large, but that will be the argument about who gets in or not. But at least you have multiple games that you have to play to get not just 2 games. And pretty soon we're going to see teams having to play maybe 3 or 4, whatever it is, but multiple games that you have to kind of fight your way through that system or that bracket.
Well, think about high school in Texas. I think it's right, 15 or 16 games. So, I mean,
you have to win.
You
have to win 6 games to win a state championship after your season. Yeah,
after your season. So that's the challenge. The big knock of not doing this at the highest level. Some people say, it's injuries. No, it's not. It's bowl ties. It's television. What bowls are you going to get left out? That's the big deal. And they would really have to work to get a plan together to say, all right, this playoff would be this bowl, that bowl. The minor bowls and ESPN's bowl package would be left out of it. So that's been the reason.
Yeah, the lobbyists are not going to let that happen. You're right.
No, they're not going to let it happen. Yeah. And as I said, let's just imagine what would have they have done Saturday night had Florida State had their quarterback and beat the stuffing out of Louisville with that defense and with their quarterback, and Alabama beating Georgia and Texas winning. What would they have done? Who would y'all say would have got left out?
Who do you go ahead, Paul and Craig?
I think Alabama would have got left out because I think under that scenario, that's the one scenario where they absolutely had no reason to allow Alabama in because of the head-to-head, because of FSU being fully complete. I think they just so happened to get the perfect outcome this weekend to be able to make the decision that they made. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was, here in Aggie land, I mean, they are beside themselves. That of course, they don't like Texas, and it's just, I mean, it is a stick in the eye for them.
Phil, I'm curious when you watch.
Phil, can you just tell Paul you love him a lot? It would help him a lot.
Paul, I'm telling you, I do feel for you.
Yeah.
Even after 14, after we beat Kansas State, who we knew was a good team, and we had lost one game to West Virginia, and regardless of what you say, we did beat TCU, and we beat them not only on the scoreboard, we beat them statistically everywhere you could beat them. And if you looked at that game statistically, it wasn't even close, other than the score. And with that said, we get left out, and Ohio State with a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
How far did they jump? 4 slots? Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, you were 5 or 6. Ohio State was behind you, and TCU was 3, won by about 50, and dropped behind you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think TCU was ahead of us, though, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
they were.
They were like 3. I think you might have been 5 or whatever. They beat the hell out of somebody, and then they not only dropped out of the 4, they dropped behind you, and you didn't play that weekend, I don't think.
Yeah, and they had beat. I think they beat Iowa State bad.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Yeah,
they didn't play, and you guys did, but yeah,
that's right.
It's. Okay, when you watch a game like Florida State and Louisville, I know everybody likes offensive football. From a defensive coordinator standpoint, some of that had to be like watching a rock concert to you, right?
There was 2 games that I really, really enjoyed. I thought Florida State's defense was outstanding, and I thought SMU's defense was outstanding. I mean, they were both. That saying, defense wins championships. I mean, that's true. I always laugh. I tell people, as juggernaut as we were offensively at Baylor in 13, our TCU game back-to-back weekends, we won that championship by playing defense against TCU and Texas. I think we had scored. You can check this. We had 3 touchdowns, interceptions to beat TCU there. At halftime of the Texas game in that bad weather, I think we were ahead 6-3, and we played lights out defense. And that's what both of those teams did.
Coach, I know there's still a month until the actual playoff gets underway, but I'm sitting here and I think I'm picking Texas to win the whole dadgum thing. Not so much asking you for your pick, but what did you think of the Longhorns on Saturday against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game? And just what do you think of them as an all-around team heading into this 14 playoff?
As we talked all year, Craig, I've sort of made my feelings known. I think Texas, once they got their quarterback back, I think through the Houston game and when they were starting the younger kids, I don't think they had their rhythm, and I thought their defense really showed up. I think what they've done defensively has been outstanding. Their D-line is really good. Their linebackers are good. And now that you've got their quarterback back, and, they've lost their best running back. And their receivers are dangerous. I think they're a team that can really do some damage and potentially win this thing. I will say this. They better get ready. That game, watching one of the defenses I didn't like watching last week was Oregon. Oregon wouldn't get out of man coverage, and Washington did a number on them with short motions to the boundary, picks, rubs, all those different things. I think Texas, last year struggled with Washington in the
bowl game,
San Antonio Bowl and Alamo Bowl. So that could be a closer game than people really realize. And I think people also, talk about Alabama always beating us. I remember Alabama losing to Ohio State when Urban was there, losing to Clemson. So they're definitely beatable, but they are getting better and better. It's going to be interesting to see if Michigan can do the things that they've done all year on both sides of the ball to a team like Alabama.
Coach, you're good. You know him well. Mike Blesh, he was at UNT. He was at Tulsa, Houston, coached at Temple High School with Mike Spradlin, among others. And he now is the offensive coordinator, I believe, at Cal, replacing Jake Spavital. Your thoughts about Blesh, who was the offensive line coach there, and also today Jake Spavital was introduced at Baylor?
I think that the first thing, I work with Mike, and I've told everybody that I've worked with, I knew that he had a future. He has all the it factors, smart, doesn't overthink things, great teacher, is a grinder, but yet realizes, does a great job with the players. I think Wilcox really made a good call. I think that Jake and him went into a tough situation and really did a bang up job. They were double trouble on offense, and they go in there and put a package together. I was fortunate enough to go watch them practice a couple of times this summer during camp, and I could tell that between them that they were building something better, and they really did a good job. And I think both of them have benefit. Jake got to come back to Texas, and of course, Bleshy gets to be the coordinator there, and I think they'll both do well.
What Spavital, he was talking about today, that you don't have to be perfect in the offense that he's going to run, where we saw high school teams in Texas 20 years ago with guys that you didn't think were probably big enough or fast enough becoming just giants with the spread or the wide open, throwing the fade down the sidelines. What does he mean by that? And is that going to be something that's easy to kind of get your personnel to fit it with what you have or don't have now?
I think what he means, if you watched Oklahoma this year, think about this. Who was their best receiver? It was number 12. I mean,
Drake Stoops.
Would you ever think that Drake Stoops would be the the prime receiver at OU? I mean, honestly, that kid was a ball player, and because of spacing and what he does and the way they distribute the ball, I think that's what he's talking about. Now, don't get me wrong. He's going to have a guy that can stretch the field vertically also. But I think that's what – I'm not speaking for Jake, but I think that's what he means by distributing the ball and being able, like they did at Cal, to have a good run game, not just a stretch game. I mean, they have three things they do. They're going to run inside zone, outside zone, and what we call gap plays with pulls and counters. And I think that he will make it simple, but he will get the ball in the hands of the kids that can make the play.
Coach, how much experience or how much do you know Willie Fritz, and your thoughts on Houston going with him as their next head coach?
I think Willie's a really good coach. And you know, I talk many times about our 2012 season at Baylor. We played Willie Fritz was the head coach at Sam Houston, and they had a kid named Flanders. They were really good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people, and I've always owned up to it. It was the week before that catastrophe in West Virginia, but we end up losing Mike Hicks. We lose all these different guys. I think 3 guys in the secondary. So I've moved some guys around. I put Chase. I can't remember his last name at safety. I always tell Willie, I said, you led me to the worst game I've ever coached in and the lousiest job I ever did, because we were so afraid of, they were doing at the time, he was running triple option. And we played a bang-up game, but it was so physical. We lost those 3 guys, and the next week was our 73, whatever the score was with Harris and them at West Virginia. But I think he's awesome. I think he adjusts to the game. He doesn't do the option anymore, and he is a great special team guy, and I think he evaluates talent well.
Phil, I'm going to bring up one of the great games. I know that didn't end the way you guys wanted, kind of like TCU 61-58 for Patterson, but the game with West Virginia, he was on that staff, I believe, with Dana. And he was asked about that. Jake Spavital was on that game, and he was talking about he just like how if you would have been a defensive coach, you just couldn't get over that for quite some time. The next year, you guys crushed them at Waco. Do you still think about 70-63 very often? You know,
first of all, you got to own it. What happened? I told the kids, and I was honest with them. When we in the secondary, when I saw how hot Gino was, and they had some players, I forget Stedman, somebody, and they had the little
Bailey,
and they were
Tavon Austin,
Tavon Austin, and they were hot, but I did a very poor job of not saying, "Hey, I quit pressuring because I didn't think we could cover, and it was a mistake. It was a fatal mistake." And you own it. It was a deal that, and then once it happened, we couldn't get out of it. And as I tell people, you know, as many years I've done it, if you've done it very long and you haven't had a game like that, you're a liar, because it's just part of the process. I didn't like it, but the thing I did like, we had another game. We went 4 games there. I think Texas beat us, put 50 on us. We weren't very good. And we were trying to find out, by the end of the year, we had regrouped, and I told the staff this. I said, it's not on them. We've got to get them back right. And we had I think you can check this. I think we won 5 games in a row to go, and then won the bowl game against UCLA.
It was amazing.
After that. And I tell people, I felt, me personally, that I grew more as a coach that year than any time in my career, because you have a tendency to say, "Oh man, it's his fault. This guy's fault. This." Hey, I was in charge. It was my fault, and I owned it. We reevaluated what we could do, how we could do it. We got those kids back, and I'm going to tell you what happened. The kids that played when the other kids were hurt gave us depth. They got better. We were able to do a couple of more packages, and at the end of the year, I think I told you in San Diego, we'll win the Big 12 next year. Did I not?
You did, and you beat the hell out of UCLA, and also at the goal line stand against K-State and more. Phil, if you don't mind, I know that it's kind of an off week, Army-Navy coming up. Can you kind of, as dependent on the holidays, stay with us through the championship week?
Absolutely.
Can't wait.
Sure will.
People love to have your segment and listen to it. Thank you very much. Phil Bennett with us. We're going to have J.J. Joe join us